Daniel Farrand, you're an associate in the planning group at Mishcon de Reya. It seems to me at the moment that whenever I open a paper, there's a planning story. Has something changed, or was I just reading the wrong papers before?
No, I think you're absolutely right. Planning has caught the public imagination much more in recent years. It was very stable for quite a long time. There were the odd story, obviously, but there's a range of reasons, I think, for that. I think the increasing pressure on housing, which is tied up with the immigration debate, obviously, has made it front page news, and also the economic circumstances. That's put pressure on development. It's put pressure on office buildings that aren't let. It's also put pressure on our high streets. So for all those reasons, it has become a bit of a story as well as a bit of a political football.
It's making us realise perhaps how all-pervasive planning is in our everyday lives.
Absolutely. Planning covers everything from your next door neighbour's extension right the way through up to new settlements and everything in between. It helps shape the way we live and where we work and where our children go to school.
I think traditionally people often saw planning as a restrictive thing, as a block to growth, if you like. Is that changing?
Yes, I think it is. We've seen some interesting things recently where, as you say, previously planning had been seen as a barrier to growth, and if you wanted growth, maybe you relaxed those barriers a bit. But actually, in the current government, there have been a couple of measures which are actively promoting growth rather than just simply removing restrictions on it. A good example of that would be the recent changes to house extensions. There's a temporary limit where you can extend for further than you might otherwise have previously been able to do without getting planning permission. The aim there is to keep the construction sector working. So it's encouraging people to actually engage builders, not necessarily just to extend their houses.
It's interesting, the political elements to this debate, because of course when the coalition government got in, there was this whole discussion about localism, wasn't there, and the fact that planning should be brought back into the hands of your neighbours, if you like.
Yes.
How is that working out?
Well, the government, as you say, came in with a very strong localism agenda and was very quick off the mark to bring the Localism Act into force. There was a lot of fear, I think, amongst the development industry as to what actual form localism would take. The reality has not been as bad as feared for developers. It has slightly, of course, been overtaken by the economic agenda. Planning has moved not out of the localism sphere, but has also moved into the economic tools that the government is using to keep Britain going. And there's always been a tension between localism and public engagement and delivering building and growth and development faster and more efficiently. And that's a tension that the planning system has always tried to strike, and I think this government is struggling with it in the same way that every government before them have.
I mean, is it possible, do you think, in theory, for there to be an efficient and effective local planning policy?
There are difficulties with pushing planning down to an extremely local level. There is a level of expertise that's needed that only comes after long involvement with the planning system. If you're writing a policy, you have to really understand not only how the policy works, but how unintended consequences can come from those policies. And that kind of expertise for local groups doesn't come cheaply. Mm.
You mentioned some restrictions to planning being lifted currently in a sort of a short-term way to boost growth. Is there more that could be done, do you think?
I think there is, but they've made some good starts. For instance, one of the recent changes has been to allow more pop-up shops. Historically, it's been difficult for pop-up shops to move into a space that perhaps isn't exactly got the right planning for what they need to do. Now, their choice was either not take that space or to take it and take a flyer and hope that the local authority would prefer to have something in the unit rather than nothing at all, to try and keep the high streets alive. But they've introduced a power now to have a 2-year period where you can have different flexible uses in a building to try and keep it going, with the hope that that will carry you then through to a time when you can redevelop or you can let it properly.
So do you think that slackening of the rules and regulations, if you like, will continue if economic growth picks up again and tenants are more easily found?
Well, that one, interestingly, isn't time limited. Some of the other, it's time limited in the sense that you only have 2 years worth of flexibility, but the rights carry on without an end date, so you might be able to use that in a couple of years' time. And I think that's a welcome addition to the tools, although there are some concerns about it. They may have missed a trick. There may be other things they can do in terms of that. For instance, community uses are not included. So putting a youth centre in a empty shop unit isn't covered by that particular permitted development right, and that's maybe something that they might want to look at.
Well, it's very interesting hearing you talking about it. Daniel Farrand, thank you very much.
Thank you.